Thank you very much for waiting. Now we'd like to move to the questions and answer sessions. And for this session, Asafura Okuma and Sugiyama-san, and from Cyber Trust, Okuda-san, and from ELSO, Kawasaki-san, from Lincoln, Ogawara-san, from Chuo University, Io-san, and from Shimane Open Source Lab, Asakusa.rb, Matsuda-san are joining. And from Executive Committee, Matsumoto-san and Inoue-san and Maeda-san are joining. So they can answer the questions given. Thank you. So from the participants, from Okura-san, there's a question from Okura-san to Matsumoto-san and Matsuda-san. The question: so how can you involve the developer of OS? Sorry. OS developers, I think there are several ways. In my case, you see the chance, because I don't think I am the best programmer. So I often create bugs. I realized a mailing list was created after the first release of Ruby, and then a friend of mine sent me the email, the first email, saying congratulations. And then the second email was I tried to make the compilation, and then there was a bug. So that was the second email I received. And then third email I received was, well, congratulations, I could fix the bug. Just like there's a lots of communication related to the bugs. And then soon I received an email. This is how you can fix bugs. So I think if the program is perfect from the beginning, and then you may not have this kind of communication. But because you have some incompleteness, there are some communication with the customers. So as I mentioned, because you are not perfect, because we are not perfect, there are some way we communicate. And how about you, Matsuda-san? Well, I think I was so impressed. There's nothing I can add. So Ruby on Rails, perhaps I can talk about, because I think the DHH and Matsuda-san are really different type. So, well, there's a lot of the bugs or incompleteness in the codes, but as a personality, DHS is more like aloof, or it's different type. So I think it depends on the personality. I think the leader's personality. The leaders is also Stallman too. So these characters may display the strong leadership, and then people follow. Thank you, Okura-san. Is that okay? Your face, a smiling face, tells a lot. So we move to the next question. Anonymous email to Matsumoto-san and Matsuda-san. Do you forget the context or the grammar or the idiom of Ruby sometime and Google it? I think Matsumoto-san said no. So, well, enumerable, some basic. I tend to refer like a delete, if, reject, because I think that it's not really consistent. I cannot tell unless I execute. So if I remember everything, the answer is no. So I create as I like. So I tend to work. I tried at each cons, if I would say, like which timing was it? So sometimes I wonder. And also in the past, there was a time that I tried to enrich the class 1.8 to 1.9, perhaps. And the methods we introduced around that time, some of them, yes, I do remember the existence of such method. I'm not that sure how to use them. And also, you can omit the parentheses, whether the line change or not. Yeah, sometimes I wonder which was the case. Yes, there was a case recently as well. Well, thank you. So move to the next question. From just a student working on the development of OS. So how do you maintain the motivation for development? And when you feel that you're not getting anywhere, and how would you overcome that situation? And also, it seems that there are increasing people thinking IT industry is a lucrative industry to make a quick money, and also recently because of the smartphone penetration, IT literacy is actually declining. So if you think about these trends, do you have some thoughts on the recent situation of IT? Well, that's rather a difficult question. So I start one by one, starting with motivation. I enjoy programming, so I never experience the difficulty or the lack of motivation. So I think it was when I was 15 years old, so more than 40 years, I've been programming. I never felt the shortage of motivation because there's lots of things to do, and all of them are fun to do. So I never had the problem with motivation. But when I was working, maybe it was around 1993, just before releasing Ruby. So nobody in the world knew that I was creating Ruby. So even if I stopped, I wouldn't trouble anyone. So sometimes I thought maybe it's too cumbersome, it's difficult. So even if I stop here, nobody would be in trouble. But I just carried on, and step by step, and when it was completed, I just released it. So I think the bottom line is whether you enjoy programming or not. So you bogged down, or if you feel you're getting nowhere. No, I don't have that experience. So maybe the similar example is I lost a whole week codes, whole week, but because the hard disk crashed. So I lost the jobs I've done over the last whole week. So that was disappointing. So thank you. You seems to be a very positive person. So the same question to Matsuda-san. Motivation. Motivation? What is my motivation? As Matsumoto-san said, OSS is full of challenges. So it's like always firefighting or hitting the mall. I do not have the volunteer spirit to help other people, but because I create a bug, so I have to fix that bugs I created. I think it was about March when I look at profile on GitHub from January the 1st to that day. Every day I committed So I thought it was good. And only the 31st December, there's no commit from myself. So from 2021, I committed it every day. So my goal for this year is every day. So I should not see even a single day with gray color on the GitHub. So I did that this year as well. I fixed the bug just before I gave the keynote speech. Yes, I think that it's like a everyday that's planned or the green day. So sometimes I worried if I fail to commit. So it seems that you really enjoy yourself. But anyhow, this person who asked the questions is worried about the recent situation of IT industry. Yes. So I think this is quite a daunting the task, daunting questions. And of course, there are negative aspects as well, because it's all come to the human beings.
Of course, there are aspects that have some negative aspects, but not everybody is like that, and we cannot say that not everything is like that. Not necessarily the IT industry itself. I don't think we can say that everything is negative. There are regions that can bring happiness, and I think we can do many things, and I think we should increase up the happy region as much as possible. If you start saying that this place is no good, that place is not good, so if you just keep on being negative, I think this is not good. So even with the IT industry, you can also find positive aspects, and also at least the Ruby World Conference is a conference that we tend to look at the positive aspects. So you're right. I think it's better not to get involved with people who doesn't seem to be happy or doesn't have to have fun. And to have fun is most important thing. And also my feeling in the field, in the Ruby startup, it seems that everybody's quite lively working on and trying to solve social issues. So we have a motivation that we are playing an important role by solving the social issues. So I don't think we can feel negative about the actual industry. But one thing we can say is that for very large companies, it is difficult to stay happy with this situation because the advantage for the big organization has a higher priority. So for smaller companies, like companies less than 100 employees, the one engineer or one person can tend to be respected. Or those who are making the service themselves, they would will make their own system rather than those who are just making the systems, listening to the customers. That's the trends that I see. But I get the salary from companies that I'm giving the orders to make, so it's difficult to say, but that's the overall trend I can say. And one thing I want to say is that the companies that I'm involved, all the companies, is looking for the Ruby programmer. I think everybody's really looking for the Ruby programmers. So those who are motivated, I think you are welcome. And if Matsuda-san is acting as a technical advisor, I think there's no anxiety about joining that company. And also we have another question from Anonymous. Ruby 3.0 or the what is a good point of Ruby 3.x and Rails 7.x? If I say 7.x came out, when we issued the 3.0, I think we worked very hard. We put vectors and we did many things. We worked very hard when we released the Ruby 3.0. And I think we used up all the ideas I had at that time. So the Ruby 3.1 I thought was becoming a minor update. But actually, now that we're nearing the end of the year, for the Maxim Wojcik, who was awarded Ruby Prize, and for the one that will be released, the 3.1, the Wojcik will be introduced, and Jet Compiler was already there, but the Wojcik is new, and the Rails application 20% or so, not many multiple times, but so I can't greatly say, but that's just the first step with the Rails application. The important thing that the speed will be up, and for 3.1, the Wojcik is a point. And also the type of prof and QC, just like working with Java, the methods document will be fulfilled. These kinds of functions will be added, and with IRB, it is possible. But I think Wojcik it will be the most important point. And I think I like the 3.1 Ruby's topic. For Rails 7, I think this morning in Japan time has been officially released. And why we had that is because the tool sets around Java has been renewed, and the DHS for the base comes that are using the hot wires and so on, the turbos, those kinds of things have become standard. I personally have not touched that, and I think not many people have touched that, so I can't say for details, but the DDH is those I was saying that I don't want to write the JavaScript, and maybe the Myron doesn't want to write that. So the programmers, what I want to make is that the programmers should be writing Ruby, and that's fine enough. So I think we are trying new. I think Opal will be the next one only left. For the hot wire, you write the code with Ruby, and that part that is written the code, the same orders will be on the browser. What's called a stimulus. The orders will be given to stimulus, so stimulus will rewrite the browser screen. That's what I've heard. And the original was the Ericsa's wide view function. That was the original idea for that. I like those kinds of ideas. But this time, many times I was rejected in the past, but now the flowers will bloom. That's what I'm expecting this time. That's my same view. And the next question, I think probably this is the question addressed to Kawasaki from ELSO. Kawasaki-san, are you there? Can you read out the question and answer that question? Is there Souls UI exist? It will come out with version 2. Whether the UI exists, the characters UI we are now developing. And the second question, can we reduce the business cost?
Yes, in a lot of ways.
With this framework, can we reduce the cost? Of course, it is possible. And if we introduce souls, the time for designing will be shortened, and also the repeated works will be automated, and the deploy work can also be automated. So the cost for development will be reduced a lot. So I hope I answered the question. Thank you very much. So also, those were the questions that we received, and Inoue-san and Maeda-san, do you have any question to the lecturers from your side? Yes. I like to ask Sugiyama-san and Okuda-san. I think you used a small ruby this time, and that was very interesting. So for the future, what were the possibilities of small rubies? I would like to hear your dream on what kind of possibilities are there.
はい、ありがとうございます。
Thank
ル
you.
ビーの可能性ですか。
About the possibility of small
う
ruby?
ん、
Well,
今回機能製造業をターゲットにして、
well, this time the target is the production industry.
なんていうんだろう。今回のその発表させていただいた
But
研
the
究の大きな成果というのは、
study that we had done this time and the big result we obtained was
プロすみません、全然プログラミング未経験の際の
that
方
those people who never experienced programming can use the tool and very easily became capable of programming, and so that result was the fruit we gained from this study. So in that sense, small Ruby
テキストプログラムを勉強するのに
can provide the
すごい
program.
時間とかお金
And
がかかるんですけど、そのスモール Ruby はブロックプログラム
It does not take a lot of time or money, and with the small Ruby programs,
そういうプログラミング未経験から Ruby を勉強する
you
には
can,
この橋渡しにな
if
る
you start studying Ruby program from the zero experience, I think
じゃないかなと
small Ruby can be
で
very
今回は
useful.
製造業のプログラミング未経験の方に
This
使ってもら
time,
ったんですけど、
the example was manufacturing industry,
他の業界でもそういったスモール Ruby を使った
but this can be done for other industries,
多分あると思っていて、私はちょっとまだわからないんですけど、
and I don't know
ある
yet.
と思うので、そういったところでもプログラミング未経験の方が一気に社内で
So
プログラミング
I hope
人材
that those with the programming experience
そういうふうに成長させることが
will
できる可能性が
take the leadership, and I think there is a potential. This is the potential of a small Ruby. Thank you. May I ask you another question? In your slide, evaluation of those people with a C knowledge was very high, and also those who didn't have the experience so far of the programming was lower. So with or without small b, they do not want to do the programming at all, but they have to do it anyway. Regarding that, there are two categories, and those who have experiences, I don't know how to say it, but they have studied beforehand, and they have done the test as well, and they responded in that way.
あれですね、
Did I answer? There are two different categories.
本当にその検査に対応するブロック
One is for the testing. There is only one.
そのブロックを持っていくくらい
For instance, this test is corresponding to this block. For that part, people say that it was very easy to use. There is another category prepared,
自由度があるような形
and actually there is a freedom in it. Therefore, it is corresponding to these blocks. Therefore, it is possible to analyze, but actually this part was very difficult for the beginners. But those who had experience of C could manage it, and they said it was easy. Thinking about the future, those without the programming experience, I hope that this could be positive, and then the result of the research would be more, and actually it was not it was difficult to interpret that from that result. And for instance, the knowledge of the sea would have helped. Thank you. 杉山さん、奥田さん thank you. Maeda-san, do you have any question? No, the question to Ogawara-san. The Ruby and the Rails upgrade, you had a difficulty. But here we have a Matsuda-san and a Matsumoto-san. So what are the difficulty, your personal experience of the difficulty of the using the Rails and Ruby? Actually, no, there's none. For the upgrading, it is possible to see. Therefore, we can modify one by one, rectify one by one. Therefore, I didn't do that much. When the version of the Rails was old, from the old version to the current version, following the Ruby. So, Matsuda-san and Matsumoto-san is here, but thank you. Now, about Rails, that is true. But you had a difficulty, no? Those people in the community of the Rails, the keyword is rather difficult and it doesn't match. If it's forwarding with a keyword argument, it's too difficult. But in the normal applications, we do not use it. So, and if the physical, the grammatical differences there is difficult. But without such a modification, I'm trying to use make work in various versions of the Ruby, but they do not do it. They tend to use the latest version of the grammar, and it would cause a problem for the users, which means that you cannot upgrade to the next version. Yes, mine is operable with 1.8. Thank you. Okura-san, Iyo-san, they are waiting. Any question to them? Iyo-san, this is a question to Iyo-san. Okura-san, then. Iyo-san? It has to use a Python for that in the beginning. I think you said that you use a Python language. But the rest of that is made with a Ruby. Did you think that it was better using Ruby rather than Python? Compare with everything is done with Python. What is the difference? What is the better points that you switch to Ruby?
はい、ですね、もともと Python 嫌いなんですよ。
I don't like Python.
インデントでスコープを表現するっていうのはどうにも許せないので嫌いなんですけど、
It is very bad,
でもですね、
and I don't like the idea.
と一緒にこうワイワイ楽しくやりながら
But I was making it having fun.
で、彼が担当したところは Python で作り始めますとか。
And some people started to make it with Python. It was a loose group of people. Therefore, we were not fitted with some constraints, but we used anything that was available. I knew Ruby very well.
システムの中心部分はRailsで作りましたっていうそういう経緯ですね。
So this is how I use it. I use a Ruby when I made it. I think Python is a very good one, but you may prefer a Ruby. And for your part, I have sympathy with you. Finally, address to Okura-san. The callback processing of a metadata, and you wrote that part, and as a function of the language, do you have any request as a function of the Ruby? For instance, in the case of the method combination, for instance, USKS value and use the tweak end. And do you have any request if you have some the function that you want to have with a Ruby? In my presentation, I talked about this. The method in the block, actually, the content of the behavior of the body, it cannot take with the characters. And therefore, for instance, if you could take it as a series or sequence of characters, it is possible to delete or subtract some of the functions. At this moment, we cannot take a sequence of the characters, which means that there is no function. Yes, the body of the method, the sequence of the characters, I think RubyWorld script lines, internally there is a function. For instance, of other gem or stgem, like a block of AST can be captured. ST actually the source code is taken with the sequence of the characters, and therefore if you look at it, the method, the source code is possible to be described with characters. ST is possible, but the block object is not. No. Instead, ST can be taken from the block. AST of. And internally, the clock source code is taken with a sequence of the characters and then taken to the AST, so it incorporates the source code, and that the function is already there.
So yes, in the past, in the memory, source code was kept. So that information, still now read by keep script line, if it's true. And then yes, the source code file, even without source code file, yes, you can read. So that's 3.1 actually. Okay, thank you. Thank you. So that was a quite interesting, heated discussion. That's all for questions and answer session. Thank you very much, all the speakers who joined this session. Thank you very much.